Hey guys, it's Caitlin coming back to you with another video for the Face of Fear Bridal series. Today I want to talk about the importance of creating a financial plan with your future spouse before even creating a wedding budget, if possible. Now I know financial plan can seem like very overwhelming, and I don't necessarily mean creating ideas for how you're going to invest and how much money you're going to put aside into your 401k necessarily. But what I do mean is sitting down with your fiance and really having an open and honest conversation about where you both stand individually with your finances and how you can both get on the same page going into this new chapter of your lives together. So you may think, why am I doing this before we even create a wedding budget? Why is it so important to do it first? I think it's important for a couple of reasons. First of all, it creates a foundation of finances to where you both are on the same page and have an idea for where you guys are wanting to save and put your money going into your lives together. So that just creates a foundation for, as you create a wedding budget, you're going to have all of this in perspective. So if we're wanting to buy a house in the next couple of years together, maybe we shouldn't be spending $50,000 on a wedding. Maybe we should be putting more of that money into saving for a down payment on that future house, for example. Or maybe paying off student loan debt is something that you both are really focused on and really want to get off your plate sooner rather than later in your personal scenario. Then you may, again, want to cut back a little bit from what you spend on the wedding to try to make sure that you're accomplishing those financial goals going forward. So I think it really puts everything in perspective and also makes sure that the two of you are on the same page with money going forward into both your wedding planning, but more importantly, just in your life together overall. So one of the ways that I would encourage you to start this conversation is don't just dive into it unexpectedly with your fiance. Don't just spring it on them of, hey, I want to talk about money. Let's, dive into it right now. That will catch them off guard and really may make them instantly get defensive, depending on how they've talked about money before or how they feel in that moment about their personal financial circumstances. So it's probably better to say, hey, something that I think is super important for us to talk about before the wedding or before we get married. This can happen really whenever you start dating someone, whenever you feel like it's the time to have this conversation. But I feel like it's important for us to have a conversation about money. When can we plan a time to sit down and not have any distractions, but to just have this conversation together? That way you can plan and kind of set up a time in the future that you are not going to have anything else planned. You'll both be prepared and can kind of mentally get yourself ready for that conversation. And then once you decide on a time and actually get to that time, make sure you both are comfortable, that you are not getting ready to rush to the next thing. Maybe it's not at the end of a super stressful workday. Maybe it's just a day on the weekend. Carve out an hour of time on a Saturday to just sit down, talk for an hour about your money and budgeting, and then maybe have something fun planned afterwards, kind of as a reward to both of you for having what may be a really uncomfortable conversation for both of you. So maybe plan to go to a movie afterwards or go to dinner, something that will provide you guys something to look forward to after having this conversation. So here's a few ideas of questions that I think also might be helpful to you as you jump into this conversation with your significant other, whether that's your fiance or it could be your boyfriend, girlfriend, could be your current spouse. Maybe you never had this conversation and now is the time to have it. So some questions to just jump into are, what are your 3 biggest financial goals? Just individually, what do you personally think is the most important thing for you to do with your money over your lifetime? Is that starting your own business? Is that buying a lake house where your parents always had a cottage and maybe that's super sentimental to you? Is it adopting 3 kids? I mean, it could be anything. It could be starting your own collection of antique cars. I mean, there's so many reasons why someone might want to save and spend their money. So it's important that you think about what the top 3 things are for you, and that your spouse also, or your future spouse, tells you those as well. That way you can figure out, okay, maybe some of these line up. If so, great, you guys are on the same page. Maybe some of them are polar opposites of each other. In that case, you'll really want to dig into that and figure out, how can we compromise here? How can we find a good middle ground? Another thing to really focus on in this scenario is talking about all of your current debt, which may be the most uncomfortable thing to talk about with anyone, especially if you haven't really dove into this at all before. But it's so important to just be open and honest about what debt you currently carry before you get married to someone, or before you jump into a deeper commitment with someone. Because ultimately, if you aren't open from the start, then this can really dive into just lack of trust later. And there's no way you can tackle these goals together if you aren't completely honest and open about what debt there may be to tackle. So talk about what current debts you have, whether that be student loan, credit card, personal debts. Make sure all of that is out on the table, and then talk about how you plan on paying for it. Will that be completely together as a couple, where maybe you'll join all of your finances together and pay it off together? Maybe it's more of a personal thing. Maybe you'll choose to just pay off your own student loans from your personal income. That is completely up to you and your specific scenario and what you both feel most comfortable doing. But whatever way it is that you decide to go about it, it's important you guys are on the same page together. Another component of that is how quickly you want to pay off certain debts. Really finalizing a timeline for how quickly you want to pay something off will determine how much you have to pay off each month. And obviously, the quicker you want to pay something off, the more money it will take to do that. So that also means the less money you'll have for maybe other areas of life. Less money to spend on entertainment, or even paying off other debts, going on trips, things like that. So just finalize a timeline for how quickly you want to get certain debts paid off. Another great thing to talk about in this conversation is what kind of potential future debt might you guys want to take on as a couple. It may seem like a weird thing to talk about wanting to take on debt, but I mean, there's things like going back to school. Maybe your spouse has an idea of going back to further their degree to improve in their career and make more money later. Or maybe you have this vision of creating your own business and may potentially need to take out personal loans in order to do that. So talk about potential future debt you both might have, and make sure you are in agreement that you both want to take on that debt, you're both comfortable with it, and it won't be an area of argument for you going forward in the future. Another area is just simple spending habits. How much do you personally spend in a week versus how much does your future spouse personally spend in a week? Now, you both may be making widely different sums of money at this point. You know, one of you may still be a student in school and not really have a steady income. The other may be already, working in the C-suite in some company making a lot of money. So this could be widely different, but it's important to realize how much you both are spending and what you're spending it on, so that when you come together as a couple, it becomes more clear for how you can align those spending habits and be comfortable with kind of a range for what you spend in certain areas. You don't want one spouse going out every week to the movies, for example, and spending tons of money. Maybe the other spouse doesn't even like movies, which I feel like that would be just a form of contention in your relationship anyways. But all that to say, make sure you're on the same page with where your money is going from the get-go. And then more importantly than anything, I think, which maybe this could even open up your conversation about money, is talk about how your families discussed money with you as you were growing up? Was it something that your family talked a lot about, to where you were super open? You knew your parents' financial situation at all times. You frequently handled money or were involved in money-making decisions as a kid. Or maybe it's something where your family never really talked about money, and that was not a comfortable topic for you to discuss. Once you realize where you both are maybe similar and different in those areas, it can create a platform for you guys to come together and understand how you're going to approach money as a couple, bringing those two different areas together, and then also maybe how you'll talk about money with your future kids if you plan on having a family someday as well. And lastly, just work on developing a very basic budget. You may not be totally ready or totally comfortable creating a full budget before you get married, but at least laying the groundwork for kind of a range of how much money you'll put towards saving versus paying off debts versus spending in a given month will give you both an idea of what finances will look like as a couple, and will make you feel comfortable moving forward towards that budget, maybe refining it as you get closer to actually getting married. So again, I know this is a lot of information. For a lot of you, it may be something you've already talked about lots of times with your significant other. For others, it may be something that you know you need to talk about but are dreading the conversation, and that's totally okay. What I would encourage you is just make that time with your future spouse to sit down and have the conversation. It may not be something you figure out all in one setting. You may have to do it over several weeks of time, and that's okay. As long as you're talking and you're getting comfortable and you're really getting down into the details of where you stand currently financially and where you want to go as a couple, that is the most important thing, and will set a really solid foundation as you dive into creating a wedding budget together and just a future financial life together as a whole. So again, I hope you guys think this is helpful. If you have questions or have ideas for any future videos in regards to the whole wedding series on Face the Fear, please leave a comment down below. We'd love to hear from you guys. And until next time, we will see you next time. Bye.